Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. And thank you for joining us for another MediKeeper webinar. I'm very pleased to have you join us today. So just very briefly, this is a recorded session. There's no need to take notes. Within a couple of days, we'll have a copy of this available on our website. You'll be able to log in at any time and listen to it 24/7. We're scheduled to run 25 minutes today, and if you have any follow-up questions, our presenters will give you their contact information, and they'll be happy to take any questions from you. Today, we're pleased to have Dr. Tyler Amell, who is the Chief Health and Strategy Officer at MediKeeper, discussing achievable, sustainable behavior change. What you think works is likely wrong. And he has a special guest joining us today. So, Dr. Amell, excited for you to discuss this topic and introduce us to our guest.
Oh, thank you so much, Daryl, and good morning, everyone. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for these sessions. You know, what we try to do here is distill the science and distill the evidence down into bite-sized portions, so to allow people to incorporate this into their philosophy, into their culture, into their practices. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's also applicable to many people's lives personally, as well as in the roles that they have in the workplace health and productivity space. And really, the conversation is about sustainable behavior change. And we've brought together an expert, Dr. Segar, to join us here today to share some of her applied research and insights with the group, because a lot of information that people have or beliefs that people may hold are in fact not necessarily supported by the research. And so Michelle's going to share some insights, particularly from a paper that she recently published that's been getting some great traction. So first things first, from an affiliation and disclosure perspective, everybody has biases, and these are ours. As Daryl said, I'm the Chief Health and Strategy Officer at MediKeeper. I'm also on faculty, and I'm the registrar at Pacific Coast University for Workplace Health Sciences, one of the only universities specifically focused on workplace health and productivity. So we do everything from occupational health, primary prevention, secondary prevention, tertiary prevention, work disability, all those sorts of elements. And I also sit on the executive board of the Wellness Alliance, which, as many of you may know, is a combination of the former National Wellness Institute as well as WellCOA. Coincidentally, Michelle is on that Wellness Advisory Council as well. And I also sit on the executive board of the Work Wellness Institute. My LinkedIn handle is up on the screen right here. Please feel free to reach out. I post regularly on evidence-informed practice when it comes to workplace health and productivity. Now, Michelle, she has her email address here as well as her own personal website, michellesegar.com. Please check it out. We're going to talk about her books a little bit later. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself and some of your affiliations and disclosures?
Sure. Thank you, Tyler. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks to all of you too for making time for our chat. I have been a behavioral scientist for a long time. I've been studying how to help people stick with lifestyle behaviors for over 31 years. I'm at the University of Michigan. I have a lot of affiliations at Michigan, at the Business School Center for Positive Organizations, at the Institute for Healthcare Policy and Innovation. And as Tyler said, I also am part of the advisory board for the Wellness Alliance. My work is very much about how do we help people outside of the ivory tower, and my perspective is informed by a lot of academic research, mine and that of others, but also I've been coaching individuals towards sustainable change using a framework that I developed about 30 years ago. And so everything I do is from the lens of, okay, these are the theories, this is what the findings show, what does real life show? And so that has informed the questions I ask, which we're about to go to now.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. And this is something that's sorely needed in many respects, because a lot of us develop papers, we publish scientific research, but then the journey sort of ends there. And historically, scientists have not done a really good job of what's called knowledge translation or knowledge transfer. How do you make this applicable and get it off the ivory towers into people's lives? And it's definitely something that, we're getting better at, and perhaps we wouldn't be in the state we are right now with the amount of misinformation and disinformation out there if we'd done a better job of this earlier on. In terms of what's coming down the pipe and where we've been, there are several webinars this year. So the Trends for 2026 is available on the website, as well as Ryan Piccarella from the Wellness Alliance joined me for a discussion on rallying around wellness in uncertain times. Those are both available on the site. A couple of weeks ago, I did give a talk on innovations in prevention of diabetes and hypertension for the International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans. Obviously, today is sustainable behavior change. Coming up is a session in Austin in April, where I'll be discussing advances in care, actually focusing on success stories rather than all the negative things that we're faced with today with regards to healthcare costs and the mental health epidemic and these sort of things. So this is going to be a very positive session. So I'm quite looking forward to that one. So please come and join us in Austin for that event. But on to the main event today. So as you saw when you registered for the event, we have 3 learning objectives for today. Learning why sticking to the plan is a behavior change mindset and tactic that's outdated and sets most up to fail. Then we're going to discuss why habit formation breaks down with complex behaviors like physical activity and healthy eating. So these are 2 of the more pertinent examples for a lot of folks these days. And then the third bullet, which I found very intriguing when Michelle and I were preparing for this, was looking at 2 lifestyle change goals that tend to create short-term motivation, but don't necessarily result in long-term behavior change. And so, I'm quite interested to hear what Michelle has to say about these 2. I don't know either, so this is going to be fun and exciting. So let's talk about the first bullet, Michelle. I know that we're going to move on to a paper that was presented. There's a lot of press. Usually when scientific research is published, there's only a few people really interested in it, and we talk about it at conferences, and we read them in books, we read them in journals, but the situation tends to end there. Now, with this paper, which is here where we're focusing in on sticking to the plan and this all or nothing mindset, you're actually getting outreach from press, which hardly ever happens in the scientific community unless it's really earth-taking or earth-shaking and groundbreaking. And so that's really what we have here in this sense, Michelle, is this paper published in BMC Public Health, which you folks you can find it online or reach out to us. We're happy to give you the link, is really something that is quite profound. And the fact that you're generating interest from the press community, from the reporters out there. In fact, Michelle got another outreach recently. This is something that we don't tend to see very often, particularly in our space. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this all or nothing thinking, and the impetus for the paper, what you learned from it, and how people can take these learnings and apply them in their own situations.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. And to create the context for the need for this study, it really goes back to the bullet right before, which was why do we think that sticking to the plan is the strategy that we should be trying to follow ourselves or teach our employees or, our patients or clients? And here's what that means. Sticking to the plan is when you create some type of plan, whether it's in the next week, I want to exercise 3 times Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 40 minutes, either take a walk or go to the gym. I have an intention to eat 5 fruits and vegetables, 5 days a week. And people have been taught to set very concrete goals, both out of the recommendations that exist, whether it's for physical activity or diet. But also, there's this fitness culture, diet culture that really asks people to do it right. And so what happens is that it creates a goal that becomes rigid or a plan that becomes rigid. And when people can't achieve it, either because of something logistical, like they got a last minute email that they have to attend to, and instead of having 45 minutes to do their plan that they had just been about to go to, they only have 25 minutes. And so my co-authors and I on this study are calling this the perfect workout trap. And it's so common, I cannot tell you how common this idea is. So someone chooses not to do anything during the 25 minutes. And what happens is that and then they feel like a failure. So this gets back to, so what this study is about. If most people, and I'm using that word, as a scientist, because I really believe it's most people. I've seen it over 30 years with people. I talk to people in the fitness industry all the time. This is the dominant mindset. If I can't do it right, it's not worth doing at all. Surprisingly, there's been no focused research until this study was published, and that might be why we're getting media attention. It's this common phenomenon, but it's been neglected in behavioral science. Let me tell you what we learned. I went into this thinking, well, if people use all or nothing thinking, it's because they have rigid idealized criteria, the perfect workout trap that I was just talking about. If I can't achieve my plan of 30 minutes to use my fitness app or whatever it is, it's not worth doing. And what we found that really was unexpected is, yes, that is the foundation of all or nothing thinking. People have these idealized criteria and plans. But the way it seemed to work, and again, this is a qualitative study, I can't officially talk about causation, but I do want to say, I've been working with people for 3 decades, and I have to say it didn't surprise me. I was not expecting it. The way it works is this. People have these idealized criteria, and they tend to be, it means I have to exercise hard or long enough. I might be tired. I might not like exercising in the ways that I think I should and have idealized. So people, if you look at number 2 on the screen in the triangle, seeking excuses not to exercise, people don't want to exercise to achieve those idealized criteria, so they're demotivated by them. And that's one of the pathways we believe that leads people to use all or nothing thinking, because they don't want to do it in the first place. So it becomes a really useful mental heuristic. On the other side of the triangle, number 3, exercise is expendable. This really embeds 2 different aspects. So think about this. If I don't want to exercise in the first place, and exercise isn't really aiming to do something really relevant for today, if I don't do it, I'm not going to have any immediate concrete consequences. When I don't go to school, if I don't go to work, if I don't help my kids get ready, whatever it is, not doing those things has consequences. So one of the things the participants said is exercise is expendable and everything else I have to do that's a priority is not. So that's the other way the rigid idealized criteria work. If your exercise plan is rigid and it bumps up against something that's actually more important than it, and you can't shorten your exercise time, or you can't make it less intense because you just don't have the energy to do your full high intensity workout, it cannot compete with the priorities. So that is why the notion that you need to stick to the plan for sustainability doesn't pan out. And before we move on, Tyler, I want to say one more thing about this. The research is mounting that people are more successful with self-control and self-regulation when they are flexible, when they come to something that they can't do perfectly, and instead of letting it go, they actually go, I can do a little bit. I can do this instead of that. The research is mounting across behaviors that is actually a more effective way to support sustainable change.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that insight, Michelle. This is quite valuable. And, I'm seeing the same thing in the research that I evaluate as well. We have these recommendations, 150 minutes of exercise per week of medium intensity, that's typically the goal. But some colleagues of mine, have been doing higher intensity, shorter duration analyses, running up the stairs as long as you're fit to do so, and these sort of things on a regular basis, and then showing that you can achieve the same outcomes from a health perspective. And, I love the idea that, people tend not to focus on preventative health simply because there's no immediate consequences. It takes a lifetime to develop all these bad habits and chronic disease that we're trying to reduce the risk for, when we know full well that, this is something that, to your point, is expendable. There's no immediate consequences. So I really like that analogy. Absolutely. Now, moving along to our second learning objective today. Now, this one is quite intriguing in the sense that the question is, why does habit formation break down when we get into complex behaviors like physical activity and healthy eating, which are typically at the top of the list for a lot of folks out there? This isn't something that's very simple. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of feelings, emotions, a lot of factors at play which influence the outcome here. And so, love to get your thoughts on this particular topic.
Sure. So, as I read the literature as a practitioner and I see people get super excited about habit formation, which I will define, I get very concerned because this is where real life has to inform the research. So, there are habit researchers around the world, and what they're doing and what a habit, the way I'm going to define it technically, which is a learned automatic association that occurs in a very specific context in a very specific cue. So I'm going to use, it's popularly talked about as a three-step circle: cue, behavior, reward, and that's kind of the most consumer-friendly way to talk about it. So let's talk about an example. So if you want to floss, and that's the behavior that you want to target to create an automatic habit or form a habit around, you need to have this cue. So let's say the cue is I'm in the bathroom, I'm done brushing my teeth, I put my toothbrush down. That's the cue to floss my teeth. And then after I'm done flossing, I have some type of reward, which could be a clean mouth, feeling proud of myself, whatever it is. And the assumptions under habit formation, which is based really on an animal model, is that the more we do something, the more our brains automatically learn to trigger that flossing habit. And that is how habit formation works. That's also how often it's related to addiction. However, let's think about what happens when we walk outside of the bathroom and talk about healthy eating and all of the multiple steps that might be involved. You have to plan. You might have to make a grocery list. You have to go to the grocery store. You have to find the ingredients. You may have to do prep and clean and make new recipes. That's for eating, for physical activity. Where are you going to do it? What time are you going to be there? What if your kid's sick and you have to pick them up at school? I mean, there's all kinds of ways in which these more complex behaviors have all these steps where the assumptions of cue, behavior, reward that forms a habit, they just completely break down. And so I started critiquing habit formation for lifestyle behaviors a handful of years ago, but since that time, among the habit researchers, they're starting to write about the limitations of habit formation for multi-step complex behaviors. And in fact, the research that exists is not very compelling at all to suggest that habit formation is going to work despite how widely popular it is. And this points to something that's about common sense when it comes to behavior change. Things that sound like common sense. Yeah, I want to form an automatic habit for exercise. It will be a snap. I won't have to use my cognition. But the reality is that life is messy, and you don't fit exercise or healthy eating in the bathroom where you're not going to be bothered by most people at 10 o'clock at night when you're starting to shut down. So I think that's really important. And the last thing I'll say about this is that even research on habit formation research on flossing did not last long term. So, Tyler, do you know the study? It's a 2010 study on habit formation that talks about, on average, how long it takes to form a habit. Do you know that study?
Yes, yeah, I do recall that.
It's the most widely cited study, and people talk about, on average, it takes this many days to form a habit, but the range was between like 18 days and 230 days. But more compelling than that, which really makes the average really not valuable at all, is that about half of the people in the study, which were students, did not maintain their designated habit long enough to actually achieve the habit formation status. So if a group of motivated students who are not juggling as many roles and responsibilities as normal adults in the real world can't form a habit I think we really have to question whether this is a viable strategy that we should even consider when we're trying to get other people to adopt lifestyle behaviors in sustainable ways.
Absolutely, and so thought-provoking for that, Michelle. And it really fits in with real-world experience. You think of people who, we just went through the start of the year. Everybody has fitness goals. Everybody has healthy eating if they're combating overweight or obesity. We know full well that the gym industry is fully aware of this. They sell all these activities. They lock you in for a year, knowing full well that by the time the end of February comes around, you're not going to the gym anymore at all because real life gets in the way. Same thing when it comes to healthy eating. We've got lots of issues with the yo-yo diets and people adding on the weight and then not necessarily sustaining that behavior change. And people who use GLP-1s is a really good example. The research is very clear. This is a cheat code in many instances, and then unless you maintain the drug for long periods of time, you don't necessarily make the sustainable behavior change, or at least a lot of people have not been doing so. So when you take the drug away, the weight comes right back on, as well as all the other risk factors that were associated with the overweight and obesity, which is quite fascinating, but definitely lends itself to your points and your conversations here. Now, moving right along, I don't know the answer to this, and I'm eagerly excited to learn from Michelle here around these two lifestyle change goals that create the short-term motivation and really doesn't necessarily lend itself to long-term sustainable behavior change, which is really what you're after. And in using these, you're going to increase the risk of failure and why that happens. So, Michelle, I'd love to get your thoughts and insights on this because I know you want
Sure.
to take us somewhere with this one.
Well, I just want to ask you, do you want to guess what one of those change goals might be?
Weight loss.
Yes, yes. Okay. So this is the irony that the two biggest reasons why people adopt a lifestyle behavior like eating, healthy eating and physical activity is either to lose weight or to get healthier. The irony is that these two goals in particular do get people to start. When you ask people why they're exercising at the very beginning and why they're trying to change their eating, the research suggests that 70% and upwards of people are going to say one of those two reasons. I want to get healthier, I want to lose weight. Here's the problem. There's a few different problems related to that. Number one, healthier, getting healthier, losing weight, those are outcomes that happen in the future. And we know if they come at all with weight loss, and that's really, doesn't typically happen very easily. I'm not talking about the GLP-1s here, I'm talking about the behaviors. So we know from behavioral economics that human beings are much more motivated by immediate rewards than rewards they have to wait for. So losing weight and getting healthier do not check the box on immediate rewards, number one. Number two is that especially related to weight loss, it's weighed down by psychosocial baggage that includes body shame, weightism, and you might think, but getting healthier is different than weight loss. Research suggests that they actually commingle, that when someone says they want to get healthier, that it's often intertwined with feeling that they're in a larger body or they're unhealthy because of their weight. So, and even health on its own, it tends to be moralized. So what that does is it creates an intrapsychic pressure that people feel. So if someone starts exercising to get healthier, even though it feels like there's nothing more important than my health, the research suggests it feels like a should, not dissimilar from trying to lose weight. So when I first discovered that in my own research, I was actually distraught because I went in with the assumption that getting healthy would be a great motivator for lifestyle change. And our data suggested that it was almost as bad as weight loss in terms of motivational detriments. I'm trying to think the other reason is that it's, using physical activity to lose weight is not a very effective strategy. Certainly dietary change is an effective strategy, but what happens is that people get very focused on the outcomes, achieving outcomes, and we know from a wide body of behavioral science that it's much more valuable if we can help people internalize the value of the behaviors as something that can help them feel and be their best every day. And so what we want to do, and this is probably a good time to start getting into solutions, is we want to reframe, or what I call rebrand, these behaviors in ways that people can start to think about them in ways that would feed their sense of identity, that would help them feel better instead of feel like they're pursuing some chore that they never even wanted to start. I'll stop there.
Right. That incremental sort of way of thinking, which ties quite nicely back into the all or nothing approach, right? That you've discussed before. So you can see how this is very much a rich tapestry and just, oodles of great information here from many respects. Now, I fully realize that Michelle and I could speak for a long period of time on this. I would love to have you back and maybe do a second webinar for our audience here. We do thank you so much for your time today. We definitely appreciate your thoughts and insights, Michelle, and of course everybody joining us in the room. Now, we did ask for folks to ask some questions of the group, and so it would be great just to touch on a couple of those. We do have a couple of minutes. Before we do that, though, we just want to mention that Michelle has 2 books and another book on the way. These are available, I believe, on Amazon, right, Michelle? We can order them through there, and I believe there's links from your website as well to them, is there not?
Yes.
So, these are great options. They look great on your bookshelf. They're behind Michelle on her bookshelf, and definitely worthwhile reading from my perspective, essential reading. Now, let's look at, just some of the practical questions that were asked by folks. And, you don't need to tackle all these, Michelle, but, which one jumped out from the themes that were analyzed by the attendees today? And, where would you like to quickly answer somebody's question before we hand it over to Daryl?
Sure. Well, I'll start with the top. Don't have the time. How do I fix this? Change what you think you got to do. We can only do what what we have time for. And gets back to the all or nothing thinking, prescribed, this is the right way to do it. Consistency is more important than hitting a bullseye. So if you only have 5 minutes that you could do on most days, that's a great thing to do. So get out of all or nothing thinking. Something is better than nothing. Everything counts. So that's my first quick answer for that one. Why do I self-sabotage? So this really taps into all of the things we talked about. When people self-sabotage, what does it mean? It means I don't actually want to do this. And so then we have to get to the core reason. Why don't you want to do it? Do you have rigid idealized criteria? Does it feel like a should because you're trying to lose weight and you hate whatever you're doing? So it really has to do about why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it. If you're doing something that you care deeply about and you're doing it in a way that can fit inside your life, you don't self-sabotage. So that really, just that question in and of itself really suggests what the problem is and what the solution is. This is a big one. I've been asked this a lot from organizations, like how do I transition from an extrinsic approach to an intrinsic approach? And, for organizations, this is really critical. And you really do have to be very intentional because this is about changing how employees or clients think and what they do. And this mindset shift, which is really the core of my approach to sustaining behavior, it's an embodied approach. So we need to plant the seeds of new ideas. And, you can do that through new campaigns. You can do this through, licensing or having programming that can help your clients or employees or users start to think about the behaviors in different ways, but they also have to have different experiences with these new beliefs that have been seeded. So it's actually not this shift from extrinsic to intrinsic. When I work with people, it's a snap. There are other shifts that are harder to make, but this actually, if you do it in the right way, isn't that hard. And the way you make an exercise more enjoyable.
Well, I wish we could go on, Michelle.
Oh,
We're
okay.
at time. Let's leave these last couple ones for another
Okay.
time. But thank you so much. We appreciate this. I would love to be able to continue, but unfortunately, we have run to
Got
the
it.
end of the webinar. Over to you, Daryl.
Yes, well, we did suspect that this topic, maybe 30 minutes wouldn't be enough. And yes, thank you. We'd love to have you back and do a sequel to this session. And thank you for everyone that's joining us. And if you were one of those people that sent some really, really nice comments about our presenters through the messages, I have copied them and I will share them with Dr. Tyler and Dr. Michelle. But those were really lovely comments. Thank you. I hope you all have a wonderful day and thank you for joining us today. And we hope we see you again next month. Take care, everyone.
Take
Thank you
care.
so much, everybody. Stay healthy.
Bye.